All right, all right. And welcome back, you guys, to the Self-Selecting Podcast. I am your host, Cory Hageman. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. You guys really seem to like that video I did at this point, maybe like a month ago, 2 months ago, 60 questions in 60 minutes. And I'll definitely bring that back. It was very well received. And to be honest, it was fun for me because I get it. Like I can drone on and I can just continue to talk. I mean, you gotta understand, it's a solo podcast. Like, who else am I supposed to throw the football to? Also, just being engaged when you are literally alone in a room. I'm talking to myself, like, and you guys, yes, but like largely to myself. So just give me a break, okay? 60 questions in 60 minutes was fun because it was very like rapid fire, and I had like, an objective of getting through all the questions. So I'm not gonna set the timer for this one, but I have a guest coming on here pretty much on the dot. So we're gonna roll right in. This time I'm actually going to Reddit, to the subreddit Bikini Talk, and I'm answering some questions. This is some unsolicited advice. If you're not familiar, Bikini Talk is a subreddit. There's 32,000 visitors, 1,000 contributions per week. I'll say, like, I was in Bikini Talk before it was Bikini Talk. I was in Bikini Talk before it grew in popularity. I was posting, and then it kind of became a little weird because I'm like, I don't think people are going to be as transparent about how they feel about me or my coaching services if I'm in there regularly. And frankly, I don't have time. I don't have time to do it. I would love it if I did. With that being said, it can be a good tool in some ways if you're wanting to get together with like-minded individuals, if you're, I don't know, wanting to gain insight into the world of bikini and hear from others. But I'll say this, there are some assholes in this group. There are people who give very bad advice. There's people who give very good advice. There's coaches in there soliciting their services. But I'd say like it might not be like the end all be all in terms of really like educating yourself, especially for more serious topics. But I think it could be a good resource, and you could definitely get a wide spread. I'll say though, like people are just mean. Like people are just mean when they're sitting behind a computer, sitting behind a screen. And some of the shit that people say about it's one thing to be like, oh, it's a competitive sport where you're asking to be judged. It's like, yeah, but come on, like have some decency. All this to say, we're answering questions from Bikini Talk today. And also shout out to Liz Brody for always being in there and like just cutting the grass. I'll say that. Thank you. So, question number 1, getting a breast augmentation as a bikini athlete, best body season to have the procedure. Maybe for some of these, I'll read the whole thing and I'll like go through them. Okay. But for this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to say the worst time is going to be during a contest prep. Would not recommend. I would even say like if you are peak off-season body, depending on how heavy you get, might not be a good time as well, just because you're probably going to take some time off the gym. There's probably going to be a period where you're not training as intensely. For me, I took 5 weeks off. Dr. Bazoo, yes, from Houston, was like, I don't want you in the gym at all. I don't want you doing cardio. I don't want you getting your heart rate up. He did an incredible job. I love my breast augmentation. I will go back to him for any future revisions, any updates. And he said 5 to 6 weeks. So that's what I did. It kills me the amount of girls like online who are like, oh, I got back into it after 2 days. Like I went back in the gym and I started training heavy after a week. It's just reckless. Things can happen. You can tear things. They can settle weird. Obviously listen to your doctor, but I would say if you are at peak off-season weight and you have a long time that you're not going to be in the gym, well, that can pose some problems in terms of weight gain. So what I like to do is if someone knows pretty far in advance that they're getting it done, I'm like, okay, well, let's make sure that you're at a body composition that can accommodate for a little bit of weight gain. You don't have to gain weight, and it's not guaranteed that you will. But truth be told, like you probably won't look your sharpest. You're probably going to, even if you're strict with food, you're going to look a little flat. I wouldn't necessarily say you're destined to gain weight. But for most people, I like to have them in a fat loss phase prior to, and then a couple weeks before bring calories up. So like they're in a state where they can drop off dietary fatigue, if any accrued. For some people, a mini cut is perfect. I have a girl that worked with for a long time. We know she loses fat quickly. She found out within 6 weeks she was getting hers done. And I think I told her, I was like, well, we could diet for like 3 weeks and that's going to give you a little bit of wiggle room because we were at like a peak off season weight. But it was like, realistically, I don't want you going into surgery on very low calories or doing a ton of cardio. We don't want your body overly stressed. Question number 2, fats during prep. This one we kind of need the description. So is 20 grams of fat 6 weeks out from a show okay for a woman in bodybuilding, starting to crash a little, joints are starting to hurt? I don't think so. I'll say this. Protein, 1 gram per pound of body weight, maybe a little bit higher if we have the room to do that. I don't really bring protein under 1 gram, but for fats, I'm kind of diligent there too, that I don't want it under 40 grams unless someone's really far behind. And in that case, I'm not like thrilled to be lowering fats. And truth be told, like that's happened, I can say like maybe 2 times with an athlete, very much towards the end of prep. In the instance that someone, I mean, like even think about it this way, break it down, 20 grams of fats times 9. I mean, like we're talking about 180 calories. So if you need 180 calories back, if that's like what we're talking about, you could do a little more cardio, you could do a little more steps depending on where those are at. If you're an enhanced athlete, I mean, that's approximately what you'd be looking at if you were to use a fat loss agent. I don't love the idea of 20 grams of fat in prep that far out. I've done it. I early on in my career, I went extremely low fat. You have to understand that the biosynthesis of hormones starts with fat. So whenever we slash those and like get really aggressive with reducing fats, dietary fats, it's going to have effects. And I mean, like the state you're in is already going to compromise your hormones more than likely. But truth be told, I would rather just pull from somewhere else. If it's like a temporary thing, if they're just like, hey, we really want to dig 6 weeks out, 5 weeks out, but then like weeks 3, 3, 2, 1, we're going to bring food back up. Maybe it's worth it there. I don't love it. Okay, this is good. It's not a question, kind of a question, but I'm going to weigh in on it. Okay, so it just says we're screwed. That's the title. And then it's the picture from, gosh, it's going to kill me. The Italy show. Caption reads, I'm sorry, what the fuck is happening? How is this bikini? And it's just for reference, it's the top 6. So it's their comparison, their front and back. Continuing. If I was scrolling and didn't read, I'd literally think that this was wellness. As a bikini athlete, it's almost become impossible to figure out what the judges want nowadays. Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. It's one of those things, like we know with international shows, there's less competitors who compete. There's less people who fly overseas from the States who I would say like have a good foothold on like the US standard, which I would say is a little stricter than the international standards, I mean, across continents. And specifically when we're looking at Europe, I've heard this from many European athletes that it's very hard for them to know how to come into shows because they want to ultimately get feedback and they want to know how they should come for the Olympia if they're qualified. But at the same time, they know that they're going to be competing against girls who could be rewarded for not fitting the standard. They could be rewarded for being too conditioned, having too much muscle. And I'll say, like, I saw this post, I think last night, and it was kind of like, yo, like, I mean, but to be honest, I felt that way, like looking at a lot of the shows, even in the States, I'm like, these glutes are ridiculous. Like they're so dense. I'll say there's a lot of adductor that I see amongst a few of the competitors, and like globally, like I do feel like the division's becoming denser and denser, and knowing what athletes are taking in terms of drugs, it's very discouraging. Like it's discouraging because it's like, I don't even want to like, I'll take a little bit of drugs, but like, I don't want to abuse them. And like, y'all are just like outright abusing them. Like that's, I don't know. It's going to be tough. I did just record the video earlier today talking about the new point system and how I actually think that's going to be more of a problem because it's now requiring people to stay leaner longer. And truthfully, like it's raising the level of competition. I wish I had said that in it. But it's making it to where people are going to have to be more competitive, which what happens if you need to be more competitive, you probably lean on the things that made you competitive in the first place. Not a knock, just the truth. And in a lot of ways, there are people that are using these things more so as a compensation than actually using them when is best to use them. I don't know. I think it's something that if you're competing overseas, you just have to know that the standard for what's going to be judged and what's going to be awarded could be different than what you're seeing in the States. So just keep that in mind if you are traveling. I'm not saying she's talking about the density, which I very much agree with. All right, question number 3, PCOS and bodybuilding. Anyone with PCOS able to get stage lean? If so, was it more difficult than you thought it would be? I'll weigh in on this. So PCOS, by definition, it is going to encompass someone with likely a higher degree of circulating androgens naturally. There are ways that PCOS is diagnosed, but that's one of the key distinctive markers. Now, that can be DHEA, that can be testosterone, that could be DHT. There are absolutely women in the sport who have PCOS and get stage lean. I don't think that it necessarily is a disadvantage in the way that low testosterone would be. What you're describing, though, is a very real concern for PED users because it's not so much a matter of like, oh, my test is 50 with PCOS naturally, even as I, age and I find that it's not impacted whatsoever biologically the way you would expect. It's more so the symptoms that come with PCOS that I find athletes really struggle with because in the presence of anabolics, you're going to raise these levels. And if you have someone who's already pretty sensitive to androgens as a whole, and like even the ratio of androgens to estrogens, if naturally you're kind of biased more towards androgens, you might find that symptoms related to acne, darker hair growth, even just like having a deeper voice, even having, I would say, just more real estate anatomically, like these things are exacerbated by using an anabolic. So I do think in that sense, you have to be careful in using anabolics and even more specifically DHEA, because it's not going to just change testosterone. And you might find that even just raising testosterone by 20 points or 30 points, that might be so aggressive for you that you do put yourself in a range where you're symptomatic now. Now, I would say you're favorable in the sense like that hormonal profile is favorable because just having a higher degree of circulating androgens is going to mean you have a higher chance of muscle retention as opposed to having low test. But I don't think it's something, depending on the state your hormones are in, that you just have to write off and be like, I have PCOS, I'm not going to be able to get stage lean. I think if anything, that is in some ways an advantage. Question number 3, menstrual cycle. Question number 4, I think we're at 4, maybe 5. Menstrual cycle during show week. I'm about 10 weeks out and I know I'll be on my period during my first show. I bloat big time. I've seen meds advertised that allow you to delay your period. They're geared towards women wanting to travel period free. Does anyone have experience with this? I'm afraid to add anything into my routine, but know how much water I retain. All right. I'm glad I caught this one. And I really hope, Emily, if you can make this clip, because this is like money right here. So those drugs that you're referring to, the vacation, like pill, essentially, the ones that, I mean, like in my generation, we were like kind of like peddled this as like, oh, if you have prom or something, like here's a way to stop it. It is synthetic progesterone. Now, synthetic progesterone will actually have the opposite effect of what bioidentical endogenous progesterone will have. It can increase water retention. So I wouldn't necessarily say you should lean on that, especially going into a show. I certainly wouldn't lean on it for the first time going into the show, just given the fact that like you don't know how you're going to respond. It's something that a lot of us who've competed a while have dealt with. Sometimes you get your period show day. I can say Republic of Texas, I have an IUD, I have a copper IUD. So like my heavy days are heavy. Like it is a detriment to my day and my schedule. It's only one day. It's worth it because it's non-hormonal and that is very important to me. But the Republic of Texas, that show, I mean, like I was getting off stage and I was like, if I don't go to the back, like if I was like a minute later, it would have been a bad day for me. Like I would have had a slew of problems. Now, if we're talking about just bloat, a lot of athletes are really like honest about like, hey, I do my best to kind of time my show in around my period, so I'm not like hitting the stage when it's at its worst. And I feel for you. Honestly, I've had shows where it's like that PMS, like where it's just like you feel bloated, you feel weighed down. It's not to say that you should use a diuretic, especially if it is specific to water weight. But the best diuretic, if we're going non-pharmacological, is going to be increasing your water intake. So that's something for all my athletes that know that they're going to be on their period. I'm like, we should plan that you're going to be drinking a lot of water going into your show. And if we are tapering off, we should do that in a very like small window, like maybe the day of. Even then, if you're finding that you just have more bloat and like pre-period, understandable. I would say like even making sure that digestion is regular so you're not adding to the problem. It's not something I would recommend doing like a laxative or using a laxative or doing it like an enema or anything like that. Trust me, like some people will go to very like strong extremes to beat a bloat or beat their stomach feeling full at all. I wouldn't go that extreme, but I would make sure, I mean, you're 10 weeks out. Like, I don't know if you ever see this, which you probably won't. You're probably going to be close to show. At that point, I would say like make sure you're going very regularly and you have a regimen in place for what helps you go. And like, hey, if I don't do these things, then I'm probably going to be backed up. Honestly, that's the best advice I can give. I'm not going to tell you to take a diuretic. I think that's a little unnecessary, and it's a lot unnecessary to be honest. But in the instance that, you are considering some kind of like delayed pregnancy pill, I would just be very clear on what the ingredients are. And if it is synthetic progesterone that's being offered, I wouldn't take that. That's going to only make things worse. Options on hair for competition. Up or down, extensions a must. Thoughts? I would wear it down predominantly. I think most women in bikini, they find that like that's just a little softer of a look. It's just a little more feminine. If you are dead set on like, hey, I want to rock a hairstyle that like feels very much me and that's up, you're welcome to do so. Some women do it. Some women with like, they're just like, hey, I need this to be more about me than necessarily like pleasing a judge or meeting a standard or just like, going with what everyone else does. And that's completely fine. I would say in terms of the extensions, like I like to have like soft beach waves and like very soft curls with a lot of volume on show day. And I found the Balami clip-in extensions, like those are fantastic. They're higher quality. They blend really well. And those are ones that like I was able to get color matched pretty easily. And I mean, like I wear them on recording days. And for show, that's pretty much the only time I put them in. But they travel well. I like the quality. They're not permanent that way. Like, you're not doing unnecessary damage to your hair, which was important for me. But yeah, I think it's something that like, if it makes you feel more feminine, great. If you already have beautiful, lush hair and like you have a lot of volume and you have enough hair to hit the volume that you want on stage, then you might not need them. What's your opinion on weighted abs? I've always thought it was BS that it makes your waist thicker, but I'm willing to change my opinion if I'm wrong. So I think in some cases, like there are athletes who could benefit from more abdominal musculature and visibility. Now, there's two things when we're talking about like waist size, the actual aesthetics of your waist. Like, do you have like horizontal lines? Are they protruding? What's the relation of your actual abdomen versus your obliques? And I think largely where people go wrong is they overdevelop their obliques. They put themselves in a position where they do get kind of blocky. I mean, like I played soccer and volleyball for a long time, and all throughout like high school, college, I was doing a lot of twisting. I was doing it with weight. And I do feel like, I atrophied some of that size, through years of dieting, but then also just not training them directly. In terms of actually doing weighted abs for the purpose of aesthetics, I don't think there's a lot of people that need that, but I'll say like there have been some pros who their feedback has been like, it would help if you had more density in the core. Like it would help not width, but like just visually if it looked more mature. And I can say like with my own abs, like I have a side that's very developed. My oblique is very developed. And then I have a side that I pose on stage. Like I don't pose my right side on stage because truly it's just much more blocky. Like it doesn't look at all the same as my left side. Now my left side, it actually looks quite underdeveloped. And unless I'm hitting my abs correctly, the visibility can shift. So like if I'm like crunching down, like I can get them to look very abby, and like for selfies and pictures online, like I can make them appear like really, I don't know, really dense-ish. But in terms of sacrificing waist size to have more visual, to have denser abs, I would say for most people, it's not going to be a good idea. I do think there's merit in doing isometric holds. So like a 90-90 curl up, there's several movements that are going to encourage proper core bracing. I think this just is going to have a ton of carryover. If you have any other muscle groups you need to develop, if you're not stable at the pelvis, if you don't know how to control that musculature, good luck. Like I can't tell you how many people who right now it's like super trendy to be like, oh, I'm getting my form corrected for RDLs. Like, you know, I am doing this, you know, right now. And they're lifting with like a crazy leather belt. As they're going down into RDLs, they're sucking in to make their waist look smaller. And like, that's not proper core bracing. Like you are, yes, you're truly making it harder for you to lift more weight on account of like, you're not stable at the pelvis. Like you're just kind of moving, ambiguously. I think for a lot of people, they might not need to train weighted abs the same way they train other muscles, but I think it's important to learn pelvic stability. And I think you can do that with isometrics for the most part. All right, bodybuilding coach influencers. This is a genuine question. Where do these online fitness influencers learn to become bodybuilding coaches? She listed off a few people. I'm not gonna, this isn't like about doxing or shitting on anyone. I'm not doing that. Where do they get their certifications information from on how to be bodybuilding coaches? I'm genuinely curious where they become coaches and how they get their credibility as a good coach. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have friends like that who are like more Instagram, like influencer-y outside of fitness, or kind of in fitness, but on the fringes, who got into bodybuilding, I guess like secondary to them being a fitness influencer, and now work with athletes. I don't think I have any friends like that. So I can't say like I've had first-hand experience like talking with other individuals, but I can say that like for a lot of people, they start coaching because they feel like they have the process down. They feel like they're in a position where individuals, you know, want to pay them money, and they're like, yeah, I can make a living working from home. I can make a living talking about this thing that I love. In terms of where people get their credibility from, it's hard to say. I think a lot of people are relying on what they've been taught, and that can be kind of scary if you're like, well, you've only worked with one coach who is kind of sus, or, you know, maybe you follow a bunch of pages and you just kind of regurgitate and parrot what they say. It's hard to know how credible someone is and what their sources are from. And we're at dinner last night with some friends, and the husband asked me, he asked like what books I read to understand nutrition. And I didn't know how to answer that. I was just like, because truly, like when I educated myself on nutrition, it was back in like 2014, 2015. And it was through following largely Lane Norton and that community of like at the time, like the only evidence-based speakers, like people in the space, other influences. And it was amazing because like, I mean, they were very by the book as far as like they were putting out information that's very credible, that like if you had a formal education in nutrition, like you may not have been taught this directly, but it was very applicable to what I was doing. And I continued to seek further sourcing. So like the drugs, like, yes, like I learned through John Jewett, but everyone who knows that also knows that a large part of this was founded by Victor Black. So, I mean, there are a lot of sources out there. I think like in terms of the commitment and someone actually getting certified, I think like in some ways it can be a little overrated because I mean, there's a lot of certifications that are they're just trash. They don't mean anything. And even when you look at ones that are accredited, even ones that like, you know, legally, like some gyms will require you to be NASM certified. There are nutrition certifications that you can get, I would say, more again in like a fringe way, or to operate legally, you have to get a formal education and have a license to do so. So in a lot of instances, I don't have a good answer for you. I think that they find that it's a way for them to make money and they feel confident in their ability. And I like, I'll be honest, if I think someone's like doing something unethically, and I would say even the people you mentioned, I'm not like, I think I know one of them, like, distantly, like I have heard her name, but there are a lot of women in the space who just simply they like working out, they like posting their body, they like the affirmation that they get online. And I get clients all the time who are like, I follow girls on Instagram, and like I'm always like in her DMs asking how she built her glutes, asking what she eats, asking how she deals with X, Y, and Z. So I think it's just honestly the attention that drives people to want to put themselves in more of an authoritative role. But as far as like owning a business, in the fitness space and like being a bodybuilding coach, I think it's a whole different playing field from just like helping people out for, like one-offs or exchanging a little bit of money to, help someone lose weight. I think like, if you can scale it, there is going to be a point where you do like want to have to stay up with current methods, and also be able to distill when clients come to you and say like, is this something we should try? Like, if you don't have that knowledge base, you're going to probably run into a lot of issues when clients start asking questions and also referencing how other coaches apply different methods. Okay. Does no one in this sub do barbell squats at all because it makes your trunk all thick? I'm just going to read this first part. It seems like no one in here does squats. Is that why? She like listed her workout. Then what are your favorite alternatives? So I mean, like I do barbell squats. I do front squats. I'm now doing back squats, and I do split squats. I think squat patterns in themselves are like really, really important in terms of building your glutes, and in the sense that like they're going to help you get more bang for your buck. And I think a lot of the reason that people are afraid of them, yes, is due to being told that it'll make your trunk thicker, it'll build your core, that you'll brace your core too much, that isometrically it'll grow. And it's, I don't know, it's kind of, I understand it. I do. I just think it's false. And like, there are people who will come back at that and be like, well, notice how her QLs grew and like how her core grew. And truly, like I found my waist has stayed the same size with doing heavy lifting and practicing proper core bracing. I think for a lot of people, it's even more than the trunk thing. It's more so their quads and bikini, because there for a long time has been this belief that, you shouldn't build your quads nearly at the rate that you should build your glutes. And for some people that does apply, but I think we're actually turning a page where a lot of people actually like they need more leg. Like we're seeing top pros be told they need more leg. So knowing that I have zero quads, like, yeah, like I might not carry body fat in certain parts of my legs so I can get some nice lines. Truly, like I don't think that I don't think it's going to be an issue depending on how I build them. But with squats specifically, I mean, like, sure, you're going to get some quad recruitment, but you have the potential to get a lot of glute recruitment. So depending on how your program's designed, I know you left it out there, but this isn't like me reviewing your program. Depending on how it's designed, volume allocation, ratios of hips to waist to quads to adductors, like it could be fine to have it in place. I find myself having more of my clients, not all of them, but more of them, those who are willing, telling them like, if we can get you under some heavy weight, this is going to happen a lot faster in terms of glute building than if we just strictly focus on isolation work. All right. Hosting friends and family. Hey everyone, wondering if anyone has any advice or suggestions around staying on track while hosting friends and family to stay. My partner's family and friends have been visiting from abroad and staying in our apartment, and it's been really challenging to stay on plan with my routine and food. Plans for dinner will often be made on the day and planned as a group meal, eating out together. I don't want to be inconvenient to everyone, so I'm not sure how to be flexible. I've taken out some meals to have instead of takeouts. Cooked my own dishes in advance, made sure to serve my own portions, but have found it all really mentally hard work and very draining. I'm not in prep, but curious how people manage these situations in both prep and off season. So what you're describing, it's completely normal. It's expected. And sadly, there's not good advice I can give you other than one, being really clear on like how flexible you're going to be. in terms of communication and getting people to make plans so that you can decide whether you're going to eat with them, whether you're going to not. I think for me, this starts kind of intrinsically. I'm like, okay, there are certain foods I will partake in, and there's certain foods I won't if I'm in prep. So for instance, when I was 7 weeks out from my in 2022, I mean, like I prepped myself and I got really, really lean. And I had a trip. It was my boyfriend at the time. He was taking his best friend and his wife and myself to Mexico. And it was stressful. Like I was not looking for, I love Mexico, by the way. I was just like, I was kind of annoyed. I'm like, okay, this is supposed to be fun, but it's ultimately going to be a lot of work. Not knowing where we're going to eat, probably eating out most of our meals, not knowing the schedule. And I can really resonate that, like, even though I restricted most of that trip and like I ate some things, it's still like it was so much of a mental drag because it was constantly just like wondering, like, is this meal going to be on track and or is it not? So I would say in advance planning, depending on how long they're still continuing to stay, these are going to be your untracked meals, or these are going to be your meals out. And even within that scope of like, okay, if it's a super high fat meal, like let's say it's something that's just super difficult to track, pasta, pizza, just fried food, then you're going to limit yourself to a certain portion. So like I did this recently with my boyfriend. We went to see his family. We traveled a lot that day. I didn't know what we were doing for dinner until an hour before. We had pizza and I'm like, okay, like I could eat a lot of pizza and I'm pretty hungry actually, but I know I'm not going to feel good for it. I know the calories are going to catch up and likely the rest of the weekend I'm going to be indulging in some way or another, even if I don't realize it. Like I'm going to probably be over my intake, my desired intake. So like I went into that meal making sure I had protein before. Like we stopped and I got protein shakes. I also had, I think, like a barbell bar. And then when we actually got to his mom's house, I had 2 slices of pizza. And at that point, I wasn't nearly as hungry and I wanted to eat more. But I was like, this fits within the constraints of what I'm comfortable with in terms of being flexible. Of course, like he told me on the way there, he's like, you don't have to eat any of this. No one's going to say anything to you. And if they do, like, I'll kind of like vouch for you. But he's like, I want you to be comfortable. We can stop and get you food on the way. And if your partner is, you know, more so there and like willing to like advocate for you and kind of like set the tone with his family, like, hey, like I'm just curious, and he doesn't have to like bring you up or bring it up that he's asking because of you. If he could just advocate for you a little bit and help you out, I think that'd be really helpful, especially because it's his family. Now, the other thing is just chalking it up. Like if you know that like y'all are going out somewhere and it's going to be dense, and let's say there are options that are going to be lighter, go for a salad, go for a lean protein. If they don't have those options, if you're going, I don't know, if you're going to like Korean barbecue and you're like, well, it's high protein, but it's also high fat, again, like portion control and just understanding that it's probably not going to be easy to track. This is where I would rely largely on hunger signaling and making sure that you really have a sense of like, this is how full I would be from a meal that I ate out, or at this point in the day, sorry, let me rephrase that. This is how full I would be from a meal that I cooked myself versus a meal that I ate out. And truthfully, like if you know at 2,000 calories, you're like really stuffed, knowing the point in which you're kind of approaching that just based off hunger signaling. Like it doesn't have to be perfect or overly rigid, but I do use hunger signaling and even fullness during and then after a meal to kind of assess, should I be eating more? Should I have eaten less? And then I kind of work around from there. But communication is really the only thing that's going to make this easier. And truth be told, you might not have a lot of laxity there. So I would say really doubling down on the sleep routine. Don't feel bad saying like, hey, I have an early morning, I need to get up, or just whatever you need to say. Like, hey, like I've got some things I want to take care of. Just like keep it short, but don't feel like you have to over explain yourself. Don't feel like you have to justify why you're going to sleep earlier, why you're making time for the gym. People will always make comments if you're doing things differently than they are. And specifically with different cultures, I've had clients who are like, it's unacceptable for me to eat differently than my family. Like it's something that's seen as a sign of disrespect. And my parents will be really upset if I do. And in that case, like, you might just have to figuratively, metaphorically eat it, depending on what your decision is, depending on how integrated you are with those values. And if your family's coming to visit you and you're like, okay, I just want to enjoy this time, but I don't want it to do a ton of damage to, my progress, my goals, then I would say really steering in the direction of managing portion sizes and thinking about the composition in terms of macronutrients of these foods, especially if they are high calorie. All right, and last question. Retatrutide. Anyone have experience with this? I know it's a newish drug, seeing a couple of coaches putting athletes on it. Want to hear experiences and side effects. So I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of coaches putting their athletes on it. It is more common than not when I have a consultation. Granted, yes, a lot of the consultations I have are with enhanced athletes. That is one that's kind of being thrown around. I would say, like, largely within the space of bodybuilding, but not limited to. There are a lot of individuals who are using it for fat loss phases for their lifestyle clients. And in terms of thoughts, like, I think it can be helpful. I think it can be beneficial. I've used it with several of my clients who really just wanted to dial back the food noise. And in some instances, they were struggling so much with adherence that even though they had lost weight and they were at the point where they're like, I'm not at my goal, I want to lose 30 pounds and I've lost 15. They're like, I can't really continue to do this. Like, it's not sustainable. And I'm kind of at the point where, like, fatigue is really becoming inconvenient. So with that, that's one instance I'm talking about. With that client, we actually found we were able to extend her fat loss phase a little bit longer. That way she could get to a settling point where she felt like, okay, this diet was a success. I can begin to reverse from here, also using retatrutide. And that's where I see a lot of efficacy too, for individuals who are getting ultra lean. I think it can be used past that point to almost regulate them regaining weight, especially in the case that they were dieting for a long period of time or got super lean or just food had to get really low. I think there's efficacy. Now, with GLP-1s, there are contraindications. It is going to be very specific to you and your family history. So if it's something you want to talk about, I'm happy to walk you through your risk profile. But I think it's something that I know I've talked about on Patreon at several points. Like, I think I might even have like a full episode on it. There are individuals who should avoid it. I know it can raise heart rate. That's one thing that it's not significant in a lot of cases, but for individuals who already have a higher resting heart rate, who have any kind of comorbidities related to cardiovascular function, I would just be aware of it. A lot of y'all listening to this probably don't. Like, you just probably don't have high blood pressure, probably don't have a higher heart rate. We also have to be careful with GLP-1s with anyone with digestive issues, because it's going to delay gastric emptying, thyroid nodules, pancreatitis, issues with the gallbladder. I would even say individuals, this is more anecdotal, with individuals who've struggled with depression, who specifically have gone through more depressive versus manic states. I think we just need to be careful of what we're doing in terms of manipulating the food reward response, because I think for a lot of people, this has been reported with 2 clients I've worked with, that they found that even like the removal of food as a reward, it just made them feel very empty and very flat, and not depressed, but they were individuals who had struggled with depression previously. And they said, they're like, I can't be on this because it's kind of moving me back into a position that I've only ever felt at times when I was depressed. So I think it can be effective. I think there needs to be a proper assessment and really garner a sense of, like, is it right for you? Are you using it? What's the appropriate dose so that you aren't experiencing severe constipation, severe diarrhea, or just generally you can't eat. Like, you're so nauseous that, like, you can't take in any food, because truly, like, you'll lose weight, but you'll also lose muscle. Muscle will make up a large amount of the weight you are losing. And if you can't train on it, then I mean, like, you're not going to look better for it. So you guys, this was long. This was fast. I'm out of breath. I got a podcast here next with 2 amazing guests. I'm excited. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I will see you in the next one.